This is the Linefeed Reading List for March 2011. I've left it a long time between videos again, so there's another massive backlog. And March is like a massive month for magazines too, because you get all the fashion quarterlies and bi-monthlies and stuff like that coming out. So this might end up being a two-parter, but for now I'm going to try and get through that lot. Starting with the Korean design magazine called Graphic, which for this issue have focused on typography and experimented even further with sort of the magazine format. Usually they sort of mix things up and put all sorts of interesting inserts, and they had like a cover that had little slips of paper that you could interchange once and all sorts of crazy stuff. So for this issue they've really pushed the boat out, and you get like this huge type specimen book, which you sort of think, wow, why has no one done this before? I wonder too, like, I'd love to know whether it cost them more to produce like a massive spiral bound one colour publication than it did to their usual sort of four colour sort of magazine, because the four colour magazine would have been half the size of this. But yeah, just really interesting idea to say we're not going to do colour, we're just going to do a massive type book. They're cool too because they include experimental Korean typography at the back too, as they should do. It's not just all English text, which makes sense. I'm glad they didn't exclude stuff. I have to apologise for the noise today. It's like the first sunny day for a long time, and London's going a bit nuts. In addition to the spiral bound type specimen book, you get like this other little book, which you can see I've thumbed loads. It's got the thumb marks all over the front of it. But this gives you interviews and background information on the typefaces featured within. So I really like, one of the things Graphic does a lot of, which is really good, is they give you sort of additional ways to read the magazine. So like for one issue, it came with like a little Bible paper A5 booklet, so you could look at the visuals in the big lush magazine, then follow sort of what was going on in the tiny little magazine. And they've done this again where they've sort of broken up the reading experience to give you lots of things to see and do. And this comes with it too. There's a little sample book based on the idea behind Wim Krau's new alphabet thing, except it's a new alphabet for our modern times. It's an interesting experiment. This is great. This is lovely, this little magazine. It's not huge, but it's so well produced. It's about typography. It's called Gratuitous Type. And it just features a few random articles about typography, but it's all produced in such a really lush and caring way. This is really interesting, actually, that magazine project just there. It's a magazine that's named after the typeface that it features throughout. So it only ever has one typeface per issue, and the magazine changes its name according to the typeface. Probably makes it really impossible to find copies of, but I don't think they care. This is another idea which I think is becoming a bit of a trend, is to have centerfolds. Saucy centerfolds for geeks, essentially. That's one for type geeks, featuring sort of Cuban book covers. There's another centerfold in another magazine featured later on. I thought this was really good too. This is like a timeline of a designer's typeface addictions, if you like. I'd really love to see like a whole heap of designers doing little favourite typeface timelines. That would be really, really cool. This is the third issue of the Gentlewoman, and it's still settling in a bit. It's different again, this one. I mean, I think I've featured them all so far. The first one I was a bit cold on, but I kind of thought, maybe it's because I'm not the target market, obviously being not a woman, which then made me feel a bit happier, because maybe it was actually appealing to the right people. I mean, Fantastic Man really hit a mark in sort of being really intelligent and knowing and cheeky and cerebral about men's fashion and style and things like that. But what I'm hoping is that with Gentlewoman, that there's sort of that, but it's in a sort of more female realm, I guess. So I'm happy if I don't completely get it. And as much as I loved the second issue, that was my favourite, especially the article about apples. This one lost me a little bit. Again, it's better than the first one, but not as good as the second one. But then, if it's not appealing to me, it's probably appealing to the right people. So that makes me happy. And it's still full of sort of knowing, sort of wit and interesting. It's definitely designed in an interesting way. Like there's all sorts of changes in paper stock and changes in ink colour as well, which is really nice. Quite a lot of that going on. You can see in the photography it sort of swaps colours every now and then, and this is like on a really nice creamy sort of stock. It's sort of separated into chapters too, which I didn't really notice so much. The editorial is editorial, fashion editorial is really interesting. Like they've named sort of songs that this woman's dancing to on each page, which is really nice. It's something that Self-Service did when they first started. They used to have a page that listed all the articles and then a song or a track to go with each of the articles. So it was kind of linking music and editorial together in what's actually quite static format, which I thought was really, really cool. Sort of needed to make your own mixtape, which is kind of cool as well. Another man is one that I've been keeping an eye on, just because the first one, it was funny. Like people really didn't seem to like it very much. The problems I had with the first, I shouldn't say first, it was redesigned last issue, heavily featuring typefaces by Lawrence Brenner. They sort of stripped everything back, and it's just one typeface used throughout the whole magazine now. And the direction changed in terms of photography and things like that as well. And for the last issue, the photography seemed to be really muddied and sort of taking a back seat. That was my main gripe, is that the graphic design took over everything. And it wasn't because... It was really odd. It was just like... well, I think the other one, like the issue before this, had like big, huge, fat squiggles everywhere, which a lot of people took exception to. So they've all gone. And what we've left with is something more pared down to, and they're sort of playing with more margins and borders, and it has brought the photography out a bit. I think the fact that, you know, it's summer and a new season and things are a bit colourful too, that sort of helped. Oh yeah, this is they have a centerfold. It doesn't fold out, unfortunately. That would have been really cool. But yeah, it's possibly a trend. I don't know. It's three. Is it 2 or 3 things a trend? We've seen 2. If we can find another one in this podcast, then it's a definite trend. I like the idea of the centerfold thing. It's sort of a bit cheeky and a bit knowing. I should have a glass of water when I'm doing these things, really, shouldn't I? I might just dry up. That'd be no good. Yeah. So you can see, like, it's still odd. It's still a really odd magazine, which is probably why I keep looking at it. But I know a lot of people have been put off by it's sort of too odd now for some people, I think. And I'd be very surprised if they didn't sort of radically change it over the course of the next year or so. But they only do like 2 issues a year anyway, so it's sort of hard to plot the evolution of these biannuals sometimes. Parq magazine has... see, I was put off by the initial hype, which was, you know, it was being hyped months and months and months ago, and one of their contributors was quoted as saying it's the best launch of 2011, and it wasn't even 2011 yet, so I kind of approached Parq with a bit of trepidation. An initial sort of reaction, I just thought it was really dull, like it really just... And I have to say, the fashion editorial is beyond ordinary. Like, they've tried to make it so anti-men's fashion magazine that it's so bland. And then pictures of backs of trucks and lumps of wood. It's like, just go for a walk around the block or something instead, you know. where the magazine hits its stride though is obviously in the articles and in the actual design section. Although again, this is sort of twee thing of, oh look, a country house full of junk, and yeah, I mean I really hope that it's not just more of the same next issue, that they do find different, radically different content, because I think we've gone through this phase of like intelligent magazines for men. I don't think we need more, and I don't think this port really adds anything to it apart from a lot of reading, which, as we know, people are doing less and less of because no one has the time to sit and read massive, huge articles by Will Self with no pictures to interrupt them. And it's very worthy too, which kind of puts me off. So it's just like there's not a lot of joy in this import realm, really. It's all very dour and serious, and yeah, there's some nice graphic quirks, but I really wanted to like it. There's some really good articles. It's worth reading if you have the time to read, which no one does. So they're gonna have to do something about that, I reckon. Here's a magazine that is actually more my thing, though. I think this is the problem. I tend towards the more sort of brash and lively and trashy sort of side of things, where they're breaking type up with crazy typefaces and throwing pictures around the page and things are slightly off. And I actually think this for me personally makes for an easier reading experience. And an easier reading experience means I'm going to read more of it and feel like I've taken more away from the magazine. So 10 have good editorial too, and I think the design, it complements it. It doesn't fight so much with it. This issue is interesting though, not only because the covers of 10 men and 10 women actually join up together. If you see them on the newsstand next to each other, the image bleeds onto the next cover, which is really interesting. But it's also the first they've left their previous designers, and actually that page back there when I was talking over the top of it had a picture of a flower on it. It's actually a little dedication to their previous design team, saying thank you for helping us out over the years. The new designer they've got, I meant to make note of because he's interesting and he's come from some other place, and I've just completely forgotten about it, which is really bad. Maybe I'll do a WhatsApp about him on the blog or something like that. But he's kept a lot of the structure of 10 men, but just introduced a heap of crazy typefaces. And it's funny too, I was talking to this is where I get to names drop now. I was talking to the editors at Graphic Magazine, and we were saying how there was a trend for script typefaces at the moment. Like, it seemed to be lots of like oldie weldy scripty things going on with lots of sharp sort of angles and stuff like that. And if any magazine's cottoned onto that trend, it's this one. It's just full of them. Very exciting magazine. I do like 10 Men. Parq is also very exciting. This is a magazine how did I find this? It's from Portugal, and I don't think it has much. Well, I think it's hard to get hold of outside of Portugal. I don't know how I found it. I found it online somewhere. But it's a really interesting magazine. Because it's got some quite cool typography, and it's very youth market orientated. Like, it's actually reminds me a bit of what Urban Outfitters are trying to do with all their sort of email outs and stuff like that at the moment. It's sort of like a perfect match in a way, like between the two. The nice thing about Parq is that it's the way it's evolving is really nice. Like, you'll see some elements drop away and some come to the fore issue per issue. So no issue looks the same, but you really get the sense that it's part of a series, that it's an ongoing investigation into different sorts of layouts and typography and all sorts of stuff. It's quite curious seeing sort of fashion editorial from parts of the world that I know very little about as well. Portugal seems very colourful. I mean, I'm just judging from this magazine. I should look up some more Portuguese magazines, really. But yeah, Parq is lovely, and always exciting to see how they're sort of pushing the design issue per issue. What have we got next? Hey, food is fun! You know it. It is. Look at it. It's fun! See, this is making me laugh already. It's by the fine folk behind Anorak magazine, and designed by Rob Lowe, aka Super Mundane, who's designing Fire and Knives magazine, and becoming like quite a well regarded editorial designer. I don't think he's realised that he's such a big shot editorial designer now. But yeah, this is just really joyful and fun and crazy, and I think it's a one-off. It's not a magazine, so I've been a bit cheeky. It's not really a book. That's on my favourite page, the celeriac. I had to show you that. And it's not a recipe book either, which is nice. It has recipes, but it's more about interacting with young readers, which I think is the main exciting thing about Anorak and things like that, is that they're not just showing. They're like, Food is Fun and Anorak don't just show kids stuff. They actually try and get them excited and involved, and not in a cheesy commercial way like a lot of the crappy mags that litter W.H. Smith. I mean, do you, like, I never see children in front of magazine racks like going, I want that one. It's, yeah. I think that's because there's so many crappy magazines around. But Food is Fun is the antithesis of that, and I thoroughly recommend it. Anyone who follows me on my blog or anything will know that I'm a big fan of Little White Lies, so it's probably no surprise to see it popping up here. This cover I'm trying to show you, it glows in the dark. That's the main reason I wanted to include it. Like, it's really cool. It glows in the dark. It's amazing. Inside, it's pretty much the usual sort of excellent high quality of editorial, with some lovely illustrations too by Matthew the Horse. I think that's what he calls himself. Really love his illustration style. They look fantastic, and this really crazy sort of blocky typeface is quite good too. They've calmed down the design a bit. I mean, it doesn't look calm, but they've actually sort of limited the amount of different sorts of typefaces they use per issue and stuff like that. Like, there's a set sort of body typeface and things like that now. But that just means they can go crazier everywhere else. And it's really good feature on like British sci-fi from, way back, in Quatermass days to, the latest stuff like the Moon film and stuff like that. This is the illustration stuff by Matthew the Horse, which I really, really loved. If they had to have a regular illustrator, that would be so cool. It seems like a lot of work for an illustrator. I imagine it's quite fun though. It's not like doing like a magazine for a bank or something. Interesting too. Like, Publishers Church of London have just today announced that they are doing a magazine for Google, which you can read online. I don't know where you can get printer copies though. I really want to get a printed copy of this new Google magazine. That, if I can, maybe that's part 2. That'd be good, wouldn't it? This is another little independent magazine. Not that Little White Lies is little, it's just called Little White Lies. This is littler. This is little and free. It's actually smaller in size as well. But yeah, an independent film magazine. I've been thinking a lot lately about genres of magazines, especially independent magazines, and how they all seem to sit next to each other now rather than competing for attention. I think taking magazines away from the newsstand has really helped make them more sociable with each other in a way. Like, it feels like there's more room for different types of magazines because they're not having to compete, or they're not being coerced by distributors into competing with each other for shelf space and stuff like that, which is a really nice sort of way to see things. It means that, like, if you're into film, there's loads of magazines you can buy. You don't have to just buy one and say that's your favourite. You can buy a few and get all sorts of different angles on things, which I really like. But then I buy a lot of magazines, so more excuses to buy magazines. Yeah, it's fine. This one's it's unfair to compare it with Little White Lies because it's a lot different. It's, for a start, the design is a lot more sort of constructivist, and you can see in some ways it's still a bit sort of zany in some ways. This I wanted to point out just because I'm talking about distribution. They're sort of asking readers to tell them where they can find, where they've found their magazine, which is really interesting because it's something that happens with magazines that they don't discuss, is that no matter what distribution deal you do or how you do it, there is a sort of mystery quotient to actually where your magazines end up and whether they are getting into the hands of the people you want them to. So it's really interesting to see a little indie magazine sort of tackling that head on and saying, hey, help us find out where the heck our magazines go once we've printed them and done all this hard work. That's enough about Guerrilla. We're now talking about print, which has had a redesign. Oh, print. This used to be like a really standout, like legendary publication within the magazine design world, and I think it's actually being corroded by its publishing house. And I say that because it's the same publishing house that closed ID magazine a little while ago. And from what I've heard, on blogs and on the internet, that's interesting actually, that page there, I should mention that. That's a lineup of guest designers for the whole year of print magazine. What they're doing is they're inviting guest designers and art directors to come and have a crack at the magazine, which I think is just going to muddy its whole identity, and you can see it happening already. I've actually gone through and I've torn out all the crappy inserts and stuff as well, so that it's a more cohesive whole. But getting back to the publishing house that publish print now, they're, from what I've heard on blogs and things like that, they're quite small, short-sighted in terms of making money from their magazines, and they tend to sort of fill them with like things for shops they're running or conferences they're doing, or like this hideous How Design conference thing in here. Like that's an ad placed by the publishers of print magazine. That's what they're comfortable with, and that's why there's so many crappy ads, and they really don't know how to sell their magazines. And if they keep doing what they're doing to print magazine, it will go the way of ID. I just hope someone buys it off them before they completely ruin it altogether. On a more positive note, it's nice that I've got issue 5 out, and it's different. I mean, it's always different, but this one's different. They've made it more, they've sort of consolidated it all a bit. It's not as crazy, which I kind of a bit upset about. Not upset. Well, I liked it when it's like, for instance, these little articles that are based on sort of blog posts that they've done on their website, they're also grouped together at the front. I quite liked it when they were sort of spread out throughout the magazine. So you're sort of jumping between features and mini features, and it felt like there was a whole jumble bag of crazy stuff going on. Whereas this issue, it's all sort of a bit more organised. But then it's like they're just really clever, and there's no reason why they won't adapt the next one to whatever they want to do. Like, it's nice that it's just a really inventive and innovative group of people, and yeah, you can still see it in the magazine. I mean, the minor grumbles that they've grouped things together. The design's a bit calmer too. It's all. I found this one less interesting than previous issues. I mean, an article about rat traps didn't really do it for me. But then there's always something cool in there, like the Letman sketches are really awesome, and it's really nice to see someone's work displayed in such a sort of random ad hoc manner. I thought that was really cool. But it's like anything with it's nice that they cover so much ground that you're going to find something that is really exciting. Even if you don't have to be excited by everything, there's so much in there that you're going to find something interesting. I don't subscribe very often. I've subscribed to It's Nice That now, so I don't have to think about trying to get a copy when it comes out. I think I included Bloomberg Businessweek last time. I'm a bit obsessed by this magazine at the moment. I'm a bit amazed that someone's made the whole business of business interesting and colourful and entertaining for me, because it is actually quite an important thing to try and keep track of in our world today, because pretty much government, useless, it's business that run things. Government is all about business now, so if you want to know what's going on in the world, you need to follow the money trails, really. And finally, there's a magazine that lets you do that without feeling like you just don't, you're lost in a mire of money crap. I mean, this is great. Even the features have like little clouds and, fluorescent yellow printing, and it's all there to make you engaged and involved, and that's something that business magazines haven't felt they needed to do for a long time. I mean, you just have to look at Fortune, how, I know he's going about how they used to have like awesome covers, and covers these days are just bleh. Like their heritage is a lot more interesting than their current situation. I think Bloomberg picking up the baton. Bloomberg Businessweek has picked up the baton with that and run with it, and you can see it's evidenced in their covers. They now have a cover flap, so they don't have to put cover lines on the actual cover. They can put it on this flat bit and just leave the cover for amazing illustrations. It reminds me of Time in the 80s a bit as well, when they were doing amazing illustrated covers and things like that. So it's really heartening to see a magazine pick themselves up and be so inventive. They've also documenting their creative process online, which a lot of big American magazines are starting to do, which is a really good trend that I'm really excited about. This is really exciting too. I'm going to do my high-pitched voice like I did for Food is Fun, because when I discovered this, I almost wet myself with excitement. Didn't actually wet myself. Moving on. It's Bazaar best covers since forever. It's actually really hard to get hold of. I had to go on eBay and order it from an American website. It's not really widely distributed. I'm not sure what the distribution was with this special edition. What we're looking at now too is the first ever cover of Harper's Bazaar, before they had 3 A's in the title. It's really well written. Credit to current editor Glenda. Is it Glenda? What's her name? I'm looking it up now. Glenda Bailey, because she's produced a really interesting, clever, and not condescending editorial sort of quotient for this, and just highlighting like it's really intelligently written. More so than the actual magazine at the moment. I'm not a fan of Glenda Bailey's version of Harper's Bazaar. I find looking at it a bit crazy and too chaotic, and it's full of celebrity nonsense, and they just pick any celebrities. They don't tend to pick interesting ones. They're just whoever's around, but put them on the cover. There you go. Put them up a ladder, whatever. Have them swinging off the side of a building. There you go. It's not good. But then, you look at this, and it's got Harper's Bazaar has such a history of amazing covers. These were way back in the 1920s or 30s, and you can see like really consistent use of like masthead and design style. Like even back, they didn't have to do that back then. Magazines tended to be quite crazy. Like mastheads, you can see here, mastheads would change issue per issue. I mean, that would be unthought of in a lot of cases now. Like your masthead is your logo. You can't change that. It's the most identifiable part of your magazine. But back in those times... Oh, I've got music. Why have I got music? Oh, there we go. Sorry. That's a bit embarrassing. Where was I? Oh yeah, gushing about Harper's Bazaar. Yeah, they went through a surrealist phase in the 30s and 40s. Like, you would never see a fashion magazine do a whole bunch of painted eyes these days. I showed this to an illustrator friend, and he was just amazed that fashion magazines used to do this crazy stuff way back when, like really radical stuff. you can, looking at this magazine too, this is why I so love it, you can see like the war came along and all of a sudden photography came along at the same time, and it just sort of killed all that amazing inventiveness to a point. I mean, the 60s were still quite crazy, and you know, the 50s are still getting sort of compositions worked out, and it's nice too to see a time before you know, people on the cover had to be looking at you, you know, all those rules that came in the 80s, like green was a killer, and you know, everyone, models had to make eye contact with the reader. All that stuff got sort of. There's a time before that all became sort of regimented. You see, like looking back at the 80s, horrible phase. Apparently, really, you know, well, like they sold a lot of magazines, but they also sold their friggin' soul to the devil to do it. Like these hideous airbrushed monstrosities. This is my era. I remember I started collecting Harper's Bazaars in the 90s when Fabian Baron moved from, I think he moved from Interview magazine or Italian Vogue, one of those. And this is just quintessentially elegant magazine design. I kind of wish like there were editorials in here when I look at these, because just looking at the covers didn't feel like enough. This was after, we just flicked past that really quickly. There's so much in here, and it's all really interesting. My mind just boggles. I keep picking it up and putting it down, picking it up, putting it down. There's just lots to read and lots to look at. You can see here, though, that the latest covers is sort of regressing a bit, I think. I don't know what it is about these covers. Like, everything should point to them being amazing, and they're just not. They're really bland. I mean, Debbie Moore up a staircase with a giraffe. That should be amazing. It just leaves me cold. You can see, though, I'm just really excited about that publication. Really good. Is that the end? Oh, I've ended on a high then. That's good. And doing stupid things with paper. There you go. Fee. It's worth it, isn't it? Thanks for dropping by as usual. I think if there's going to be loads and loads of magazines coming out in the next little while, I might have to do another video quite quickly. We'll see what happens. But thanks for stopping by as always. And for more information, visit linefeed.me. And that's it. See you later.